Hey, welcome back to another episode of Spellstorm Miniatures. My name is Jeremiah, and I have a very exciting episode with you. I have one of my favorite local painters on as a guest. I have Alyssa joining me. Alyssa, say hello.
Hello.
Hello. I'm so happy you're here. As I mentioned, you're one of my favorite local painters. I've been, kind of following your work, vicariously through Facebook, and and you and we met. I don't know if you remember. I think it was a Warhammer day. I think it
Yeah,
was.
I think it was the one of the birthdays.
Yeah.
I think it was the
Standing
third
outside,
birthday.
waiting in line, and
Yeah, it was
talking.
the third birthday for the Warhammer store, I think, and you had mentioned you loved the stuff that I had entered in the other painting competitions. And then we got to talking and then we added each other on Facebook and
Yeah. And now we're here. Now
yeah.
we're talking. Yeah. So yeah, and that's the thing is, yeah, I got introduced to your work, and I was like, wow, that is amazing. And you kind of went in and talked about a little bit of what you're doing, and so I really, really want to talk about that.
Yeah.
But before we get there, I would love to just kind of hear about your journey into the hobby in general. Like what games do you currently play or collect models for, and and where'd you start, and how'd you get here? I guess let's do a kind of an introduction. I guess.
Well, I don't play a lot of games, mostly because that's not really what drew me into the hobby.
Hmm,
I just love painting in general. It's just so much fun.
nice.
But I do enjoy the smaller scale games. So Kill Team and Necromunda are my two favorites to play. I don't get to play as much as I would like, but it is what it is.
Yeah.
I started painting Grey Knights. Grey Knights was my first painting kind
Right.
of squad. I started those because I was introduced into Warhammer by my then boyfriend, my now fiance,
Woohoo!
and he was enjoying reading the Horus Heresy books.
Yeah.
And then he built up a really big collection, and I wanted to be able to do something that he enjoyed so that way maybe along the lines we could do it together and
Nice.
and I could support him and understand what it is that he's talking about and get excited with him.
All right.
And so I was reading the Grey Knights Omnibus and I got super excited. I thought they were really awesome. And he told me that there's plastic miniatures for them, and I was drawn to the Paladin squad because I really wanted to paint the banner.
Yeah.
I
Okay. Wow.
absolutely loved the banner that he did. In fact, I think a few months ago I did a redo of that model so that way I could compare the progress I've made in my painting skill from my very first model to about 5 years later and see how that looked and how that turned out.
Okay.
And then he got me some Blood Angels because they also had a lot of banners and a lot of filigree, and I just really enjoy those really tiny details.
Mm,
And ever since then, it's always just been Blood Angels, Grey Knights, and then whatever I think looks cool.
okay. Yeah. So you've been in the hobby roughly 5 years then?
Actually, I want to say, 7 years maybe.
7. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So
Right
I
on.
guess a few months ago was more like 6 or 7 year progress window.
Nice.
Um,
Nice. Yeah. You shared so much there. I love the fact that the lore, you kind of come in through the lore side, right?
yeah.
And less the game side. Like currently I'm reading well, I'm listening to it on audiobook, the
hmm
first book in the Harris series.
Oh, the
Is
Horus
it
Rising.
Horus Rising? Yeah, it is so good.
It
and
is fantastic.
I just want to have a whole bunch of Space Marines now, and I want to have
Hmm.
like a regiment from like every group that's like represented in the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And oh
they're my favorite character from that book is Loken.
yeah,
He's just such a good guy. I love him. He's my favorite.
yeah, I'm really enjoying. I'm connecting with him too, and that's so good. That's so good. Um,
Hmm.
but then the thing that you said that I think scared me was that you wanted to paint the banners, and
Hmm.
like that's the part that I do. Like if I do is the last thing I do, and you know, and so do you have like an art background or something? Like what, or you just not afraid? Are you just fearless?
um, I guess I guess it really could be a combination of both.
Mm,
So I grew up in a pretty relatively artistic household.
okay.
My mother taught me calligraphy before the school was even teaching cursive to the class. So I was about, I want to say 5 or 6, and I'm already doing calligraphy with
Wow.
calligraphy pens. And so when we were doing cursive, I was already 20 steps ahead
Yeah.
of that. And my mom, she really enjoyed doing a lot of crafting, a lot of kind of a bit of sewing, but it was mostly a lot of paper crafting and things like that.
Hmm.
And my grandmother, she likes to crochet, so I had my hands in about just about anything.
Okay.
And as a child, I was always drawn to those kinds of creative type of hobbies. I have terrible ADHD, and what happens is that I will hyperfixate on some kind of crafting hobby for about a week, get extremely good at it, get to the point where I don't learn anything more from
Hmm.
that. And I don't there's no getting better, there's no learning new things, and so then I drop it cuz I get bored. So
Okay.
I've just kind of I
Just
did kind of have an artistic background,
yeah.
and then I also went into art school for industrial design. So I learned a bit of color theory, a bit of how shadows work, and things like that, because that's all the basics for anything with art.
Hmm.
And then I guess I'm also fearless because I just go and do it. I think of something and I get really excited about it and I just do it. I don't second guess about it. I mean, I kind of second guess at the end.
Yeah.
Was where I look at it and I just think, was this really a good idea? And then I show the fiance and I show some other people and they're telling me, oh man, that's fantastic. That looks great. And I'm just like looking at it and thinking, there's some other things that I should have done or could have done,
Yeah.
but it's
Well,
always
we
at
are
the
our own
end.
worst critics, right? We're like what you went into it, so like
Yeah,
yeah. So
but
I can see that.
it's always at the end. It's never at the beginning where I'm just thinking where
Hmm.
I just avoid things. I mean, I do avoid some things, but
Yeah.
not as much anymore. It's just kind of like
So what is
I'll just go do it.
okay? So I want to come back to the banners in a second, but what is something that is maybe a little bit on the more difficult scale for you, or something that you may avoid if given the opportunity?
Faces.
Boom. Boom.
I try to avoid faces.
So do all your Space Marines have helmets?
Yes, they all have helmets. Also, it doesn't make sense lore-wise for them to go into battle without their helmet.
Good point. I concur.
You know, their head's just going to get blown right off and they need their helmet. So nobody questions why my space marines all have helmets because it just makes sense. You know, you don't want fleshy head just
Yeah.
exposed to the world and being like, "Hey, come shoot at me."
See, I totally agree with this. I'm on board. So let's circle back to the banners then. So some of the banners that we get are, and I, and I do games from across, multiple model lines, and so
Hmm.
so I see a lot of these things. But some banners are just a solid piece of plastic with like no texture,
Hmm.
and then some banners actually have the texture kind of molded into it, so
Hmm.
you know kind of what's going there and stuff. Do you do you do a lot of freehand? Do you like how do you approach a banner work for like your Grey Knights and stuff or your Blood Angels?
Well, the banners I've worked with, they're the ones that have the molding in it already.
Mm-hmm.
So I've never had to freehand a banner,
Oh, okay.
but I have done some freehand. It's very small, nothing too large, like
Hmm.
what you would see on Instagram with people with knights
Yeah.
or Mortarian's wings. There, I don't really do the freehand for those kinds of things, but I mostly do like small, intricate stuff on their armor.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I have done a lot of pauldrons because I I had the fantastic idea for a kill team where I did it with the My Little Pony themed.
Oh, I know some listeners who are gonna love that.
So I freehanded their cutie marks onto the shoulder pads.
Wow.
And I've done some freehand for the store as well.
Hmm.
So I think it was Crimson Ores. I forgot what it was, but it's basically the ultramarine sign, but it's upside down and in red.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh.
And I've
Okay.
done a Raven Guard for the store as well. So
Yeah.
most of the freehand I'm doing is really, really small.
Okay.
I think I've done cherry blossoms on. I did a cherry blossom themed marine, so he was just bright pink, and
Oh.
I drew some cherry blossom petals on him, and on his leg I drew a few branches. And the last thing I freehand was my fiance wanted to learn more on painting,
Mm-hmm.
and so he pr- propositioned to me to paint two models for him to copy.
Okay.
So that way he could learn how exactly I paint and see he could see and have a physical reference that he can turn around and then ask me how I did this. So the cherry blossom was one, and
Mm-hmm.
the other one was one for his army. He likes to do carconodons, and I did. Uh, they are the shark marines,
Okay. Yeah,
and
that helps.
I did some tribal markings on their armor for him.
Oh, nice.
So
Okay. So, so how do you paint? If you could describe, like, for our listeners, I know this is an audio podcast, but um, your style, and maybe even talk about how your style has evolved over the years. Like,
yeah.
did you start with, a base coat, a wash, and a dry brush, or like, like we all start there at some point? Like,
Yeah,
where? Yeah.
so I started with the base coat, wash, and edge highlighting.
Okay.
I didn't do any layering or anything like that. It the beginning it kind of confused me to do that, and then eventually it went to base coating, wash, and then relayering so that way I could have the black lining in all of the recesses.
Oh
A
yeah.
lot of people tell me, "Oh, you could have panel lined that," and I said, "Yeah, I could have, but the wash also shows other shadows that I would have missed otherwise." And then I did edge highlighting with that after some layering. And then I've moved on to, because I did that for a while.
Hmm.
And then I saw I think they call it spectral highlights, where it looks more of a like a natural highlight rather than just that stark, sharp edge of edge highlighting. So I went from doing all of that, and then now I do a base coat and then a wash, so that way I can see shadows where I normally wouldn't see them. And then I layer. I do a lot of layers
Okay.
because I don't really. I have the patience for it, so I do a lot of layering
Yeah.
where I do the more natural looking highlights. So, like on the shoulder pads or on the arms, where light will kind of gradient or that kind of gradient where it's
Yeah.
super bright up top, but it's not as dark in the middle, but then it's really dark at the bottom.
Yeah.
So that's what I do now, and
Okay.
it takes a lot of patience, at least the way I do it. But that's because I, I I've got the time, I've got the patience, and I just enjoy doing that. It's a
Yeah.
lot of layers, a lot of feathering, and yeah.
Feathering. Yeah. I'm I'm taking notes. I'm I've been around in the hobby for a while, and I've had this podcast for a number of years, and I've got to meet a lot of interesting people, and they all have sort of their different techniques that they get to do.
Mhm.
And for as much exposure I have, I still feel like I'm very much an amateur. I have
Well,
so much
I
to
mean,
learn.
an amateur just means someone who does something that they love.
Oh, well, then there it is. That defines me.
So we're really, I guess we're all amateurs
Yeah, that's true.
because
Yeah.
I mean, you're only doing this out of the enjoyment. It's not
Yeah.
your job.
Right. That's right.
It's not your main
I wonder how
income.
that would change if we got paid to do it. That'd be interesting.
Well, then you'd be
Um,
a professional.
how much time do you actually spend? Like do you have like a regular rhythm? Like it's like this is hobby night, or are you one of those persons who does a certain amount every day of the week, or like what kind of rhythm do you personally hold for hobbying?
It used to be that I did it every day,
Hmm.
for about 5 or 6 hours a day. Now it's just teetered off into whenever I feel like it,
Okay. Yeah.
whenever I have the time. I just recently got a new job, and for something that's part time, I seem to be working a lot.
They got you in the door, and now they want more of you.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
but that's okay. I love the job. It's a lot of fun,
That's good.
and but
Okay.
yeah, it's just kind of gone into whenever I feel like it,
Yeah.
whenever some kind of thing it gets me excited to do, and then I just go do it.
Yeah. Some of our listeners are um, very prolific in the sense that they can bust out, large models or a large number of models on the weekend, right?
Hmm.
And and then we have some of our listeners who, very slow and meticulous, and then and then everyone in between, right?
Hmm.
Um, Personally, I had fallen into a rhythm where I basically got one hobby night a week,
Hmm.
and just with work, and I've recently gone back to school, and so but then my one hobby night a week is being encroached upon by my kids sports teams practice. So it's like, so I haven't hobbied like the way that I want to hobby in quite a while, because of that. And um and so but I know that like um it brings a lot of enjoyment for me, and just
Hmm.
like peace and like sense of accomplishment when I finish a model, and
Yeah,
I get to say I did this.
yeah.
I
It's
parade it around. I show my wife I did this. I did it.
it's kind of like that once a week self care
Yeah,
time. You set aside
exactly.
a time, and this is a you time. This is
Yeah,
where you sit down, you
yeah,
zone out, or you focus on something. But for me, it's just kind of free flowing, I suppose. But
Yeah.
I'm definitely one of those slow and meticulous types.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
are there are some times where I get really excited and I'll finish it super fast. Like I remember when I got the Lord of Change model,
Mm,
I picked him up, I came home, and then I sat down at my desk. I built and painted him in about 16 hours straight. I did not
wow.
leave my desk for 16 hours straight, and I just sat there and worked on him. And Magnus, I did the same, except
Nice.
that one took me 18 hours.
Wow. It says a lot about the model, though, right?
Mhm.
Because it captured your attention. There's enough detail and enough going on that like you don't get bored and you're just like, I have to do this now, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah. I get that feeling about certain models too. We've talked a lot about Warhammer.
hmm
Um, do you have you branched out? Do you build and paint models from other companies, other lines?
I I've I've got a few models from Kingdom Death.
Yes, I was going to ask. You would be a good painter for Kingdom Death.
Yeah, so I have a few models for Kingdom Death.
Hmm.
The only one I've painted so far though is the Wet Nurse.
Okay, I'm not fully up on their whole line. I don't know if I know that one, but
It's
I'll
it's
Google it.
it's one of their pinup versions or one of their pinup
Oh, okay.
models. I mostly have the pinup models.
Yeah, they're nice. They're good
And
models.
I mean, if you're gonna be able to paint a busty chest, you might as well be able to paint a busty chest because it's fun.
Yeah.
And I mean, no one's going to be really upset, or hardly anybody's going to be upset about staring at a chest for many hours of the day.
That's well put. Well put. I like that.
I've
Yeah.
I've also recently branched into painting busts.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have supported Squid Mars
Yeah.
Kickstarter for his brushes, which
Okay.
I have a set and I haven't touched because I'm terrified of them.
That's funny.
Mostly for the fact that I'm not good at remembering to wash my brushes.
Hmm.
So the last thing I need is to use those brushes and then forget to clean them
Yeah.
and then ruin them.
Yeah.
Or forget that I'm using that brush and put it in metallic paint and ruin them.
Yes, which I have done before.
So I don't want to do that. They still sit in their little canister, just propped up on my desk.
Hmm.
But
So what tools do you use? Like what brush lines do you like? What paint
uh,
lines do you like?
I I really enjoyed this brush that you can get at Blix, and it's this Velvet Touch uh, brush. I think they're synthetic brushes, but they've got this red handle on it, and I use basically one brush. I use a round two brush, and I
Round two.
use that brush for literally everything. Uh, since I have an airbrush, I use the airbrush for the priming and the base coating.
Okay.
And well, I guess I use two brushes. I do have a wash brush, but I rarely use a wash anymore. I just use darker shades
Hmm.
of whatever color I want it to be at the final, and then use that as the shadows.
Okay.
But if there's something where I really want to change the color of, such as if there's a red, but I want it to be a little bit more purplish, then I'll use a wash. But other than that, I use the round two, and I use it for
Wow.
everything. I use it for freehanding, I use it for my layering, I use it for any kind of small detail, anything like that. I just use the one brush.
That's pretty impressive. Yeah. Okay.
It could just be me being lazy because I don't like having to switch out brushes. I
Yeah.
don't want to have three brushes out and then have to use all three. when I could just use the one.
Yeah. I have you experimented with sizes of brushes? Like have you used have you round four, for example, and or have you always just kind of gravitated towards that size and like what
Uh,
got you there?
so I used, I think I picked up a 3 and a 1, 2, and a 3. I figured the 1 was good for dotting eyes
Mm-hmm.
and doing the more exact type of look for freehanding, those like pinstripe type of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And so I have that one set aside. And then I thought the 3 was a bit too big for me
Mm.
because it didn't give me as much control as I would have liked.
Okay.
And then I just kind of settled on the 2, and then I kept using it and just kept using it. I have used other shapes. I think there's one that I have that if I don't airbrush and I decide to hand paint the base coat and it's a filbert shape, I don't know the exact size of it. So instead of it being kind of pointed,
Yeah.
it's kind of like this flat round brush.
Oh, yes, I know what you're talking about. I have one of those.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I like that brush for when I do my base coating by hand because it does get into all the nooks and crannies, and because of the
Right.
way it's shaped, it really does get in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to talk about, brush eyes because, when I first started painting, I had what I would consider a too small of a brush now. And you could see every stroke, and I just kept going over and over and over again. They wouldn't hold the paint, yada yada yada. And I think I was using a 2 for a long time,
Mhm.
and then um, and then I bumped up to a 3 or a 4. I don't remember which one it was when I was doing a large number of units,
Mhm.
and I don't paint the minion guys, or the grunts. I don't paint
Yeah.
them to such detail, but like the unit leader, I would, for example.
Yeah.
And so, and I found that I was able to actually get through them much faster. You
Yeah.
know, and so I always like to ask, and
Yeah, I'm not the army painter type.
yeah,
I don't paint large number of units at a time. I usually stick with the 1
hmm,
at maximum 5
yeah,
at my desk, and that's it. So all of my troops are the same quality that I would do for an elites or an HQ or any kind of character. And
I bet
so
they look beautiful on the table.
I haven't painted troops in a long time, and because of that, I actually don't have that many troops
Hmm.
because I've only ever painted what's interesting to me. I have about 20 troop models and
Oh,
about 40 or 50 elite or HQ models.
nice.
So it's really hard for me to play large scale games because I
Yeah,
don't have the bodies for it. I usually lose in my bigger games because I only have elites and that's all I can field.
yeah, yeah. No, man, that's all right though. That's all right. So one of the reasons why I brought you on is, our local Warhammer store does a Legion of the Brush competition, kind of on the regular. And
Hmm.
in February, they had the red and gold, or that was the name of that particular event, right?
Hmm.
And you got second place,
Hmm.
and so congratulations.
Thank you.
And yeah, and so I wanted to talk about um, like what it's like to submit a piece to be judged, to be judged by your peers, and
Hmm.
and I wanted to ask, what other competitions have you entered pieces into? Have you ever considered paint, painting something for one of the larger ones? And I wanted to tap your brain into that experience.
Yeah.
And
Uh,
I personally have never submitted anything to be judged, and so I'm I'm a scaredy cat, and so
Well, I actually am not a competitive person. So I never entered into anything competitive, even though people are like, you should enter this, you'd be great at it. I'm like, nah, that's not really what I want because I mean they're gonna give me feedback as well and I don't really care about their opinion.
Mm,
So I guess e- but this was something that it wasn't really that I was wanting to be judged by my peers or I really thought of it that way. It
yeah,
was just more of not to toot my own horn, but I was showing off.
that's okay. It's okay to do that, right?
It was more that I was super proud. You know,
Yeah,
this is something I did. This is something that I'm really into, and like how I mentioned with my ADHD that I get into something and I drop it after a week. It's pretty impressive that this is something that I've been able to manage to keep for just even a year. It's been
yeah,
it's interesting. It's
mm,
but I was just incredibly proud of what I had done and I thought, you know, what the heck? Why not?
yeah,
Let's just enter into the local store competition. It's no sweat off my back or anything like that. It's it's nothing too prolific. It's not Golden Demon. It
yeah,
is what it is. It's just a bunch of us, especially regulars that I already know and I've met
yeah,
as well. It's just basic. I just viewed it as a bunch of friends just showing off their work that they've done because they're proud of what they did and what they've accomplished.
nice.
And I guess that's why I enter in competitions is basically I'm just showing off.
Yeah. But you describe it in such a friendly way, though. It's like, but you're right. You're like, I know a bunch of them and things like that. So let's talk about I guess, the most recent one. Um, the name of the event was Red and Gold. I'm sure
Mhm.
that there was a reason for that, and I would love to hear what they were looking for. And then I want to, and what piece did you paint, or what model did you paint, and like why did you choose that one?
Yes.
Can I go through that thought process?
So the reason why it was red and gold was to celebrate Chinese New Year for
Oh,
February.
right
And
on.
red and gold is their main color for
Yeah,
their themes and whatnot. So the store picked red and gold to be the theme. And since I paint a lot of blood angels, I was like, I might have some experience painting red and gold. Maybe just a
maybe.
tad. There's a
Hmm.
few models, at least one or two that I've painted red and gold, maybe.
Hmm.
But so what they wanted was for the red and gold to be prominent.
Okay.
So you couldn't just have small details of gold and small details of red and have the rest of the model be like green. The
Okay.
so you had to really show off reds and green or reds and golds.
Hmm.
And that was all they asked and I entered in because it'd been a while since I got to sit down and paint. So I used it as a kind of like a push to
Yeah,
have me get something done.
I like that. Something to give you some motivation.
Yeah, and since it's only a single model, there's no stress about having to have a whole squad done. It's just the one, and you could just focus on just the one.
Yeah,
And one model painted is still better than no models painted, in my
yeah,
opinion.
that's right. So what model did you paint?
I picked the Blood Angels Praetor model from Forge World.
Oh, it's a Forge World model.
Yeah, I think it's a
That
fine cast model.
okay. Now that
But
explains why I didn't recognize it.
I thought it'd be funny to bring that model in because that model actually was a gift from the store manager to me.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah,
Nice.
so I thought, hey, why don't I just do this? And he's regal enough where I don't have to worry about trying to figure out where the gold's gonna go because he's literally covered in different filigrees and trims that are gonna be gold. So it was
Yeah,
easy.
yeah, yeah. It looks gorgeous, and I regret not having seen it in person. Um, for whatever reason, I just didn't go and look in the case.
Well, he's
Uh,
still in the case if you
oh, he's
want to
still
go.
there.
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
I
So I can
haven't gone
stop
and
by and
picked
look
him
at
up
it.
yet.
Okay, then I'll go do that. Hopefully before you do that. Um, but I wanted to, um, and I know this isn't your work, but the piece that won the
Hmm.
competition last month um, had a was on a base. Like it had like
Yeah, it. I actually was there when he was working on it,
okay,
and as soon as I asked him what he was working on, he's like, "Oh, the Legion of the Brush." I had an idea, and then I just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and I'm just thinking, I was like, "I'm not gonna win against that." That is, I had already immediately known that is just that's not happening for me,
yeah,
and he did a fantastic job. It
yeah,
was I loved the way the armor came out on his Space Marine. It
yeah,
was like the really red coppery kind of look, and it was fantastic. It looked real good.
yeah, man, yeah, yeah. I liked seeing the photos. I did see the photos online, and when I saw that one, I was like, well, that's pretty darn good. So I like some of that scenic base work that that
Yeah,
people can do.
my basing game isn't all that great because for a while I didn't base my Marines
Mm-hmm.
because for a while I had thought that I was going to be playing 40k, and I would have really liked if everyone had the same base, so I didn't base them. And
Yeah,
now I'm just kind of painting for me, and it doesn't really matter what base they're on.
yeah,
And now I'm just basing and trying things out and
yeah,
going with what I feel would look good with that model.
yeah. I like that. I like I like your approach. Like I wonder how many of our my listeners, you know, would would feel freedom to be able to just approach a model and be like, I want to paint that model, not because it fits in my army or because it's a competitive piece, but
Hmm.
because I just like the look of that model and I want to paint it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely freeing because I hear a lot of people they complain about having to paint so many models for this game,
yeah,
and like they don't want to paint. They don't like painting because they have to paint so much.
yeah,
And it's for me it's definitely a lot more freeing of just being able to be like, I see that model. I see what I can do with it
yeah.
and I want to do it. Just like that whole kill team model for the My Little Ponies. It was just it was dumb to me, but it was so much fun to, find wings for them because I used the Scourge kit and I took the wings off of those
Okay.
and I put them on Space Marines and I sculpted a unicorn horn with green stuff
Oh
and glued them
man.
onto their helmets. And I took the plumes off of custodes and used those for well, ponytails for
Yeah,
their backs.
that's
So
cool. Okay.
so each one has a tail
Uh-huh.
except for rarity because I actually used a custode warden for her model because I figure if rarity as a pony is as regal as she definitely should have the custode warden with the robes and how regal their armor looks.
Yeah.
So I went with that. And it all came together. And I looked at it all as a squad. And I was just thinking, man, this is fantastic.
Do you keep like a blog or like an Instagram account or something where you post pictures of your work? Or
I have my Instagram, and then everything that I share on Instagram is shared on my Facebook.
okay, that's how I
Um,
see it, as on
yeah,
Facebook.
so yeah, I guess, but it's more like my personal Instagram. I don't have a dedicated
Okay.
social media for models and it, or painting and anything like that. Mostly because I mean I do this for me.
Yeah.
This is my thing. I don't plan on becoming a professional. I don't plan on becoming like a media star where people are, thousands of people want to see my work, because I feel like that would be too much pressure at that point where I feel like people are going to be expecting things of me,
Mhm.
and I don't want that,
Yeah.
especially as free flowing as my schedule is, of like, oh, I'll just paint that later,
Yeah.
or maybe I'll paint that now, or
Yeah.
it'll be months that'll go by before I pick up a paintbrush again.
Yeah. I think that's super healthy. It's nice just to have have good boundaries and know where the limitations are. I think some of us bite off more than we can chew sometimes, you know?
Yeah, I have
I'm guilty of that myself.
I've had a lot of people ask if I will do commissions for them,
Yeah.
or if I do commissions. And for a while I thought about it, and sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It kind of depends on the model and how much free time I have.
Yeah.
But it's severely limited to like either one model or a squad of five. Anything more than that, I probably won't do it for you, because then that's just too much for
Yeah.
me, especially with the amount of detail that I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've done, I think, two commissions,
Okay.
and that's about it.
Yeah.
I'm not super fond of them.
Yeah. There for the gaming side of it, commission artists are nice and helpful,
Hmm.
for the players, right? Um, but but like there's so much more to our hobby. We've
Hmm.
already, talked about lore and the reading and painting and gaming. Like, they're all like connected, and we all kind of have the thing that keeps us in and drives us, brings us
Hmm.
together. So yeah, yeah, I have erred on the gaming, more of a gamer than a hobbyist.
Hmm.
And um, and one of my first early games that I played was War Machine, and War Machine didn't often have painting requirements for events, and so you could show up with primed models or even just bare
Hmm.
bare models, and still be able to play. And and unfortunately, that probably um, taught me uh, some unhealthy habits in terms of how to approach, you know, the hobby and stuff. So, because playing with painted models is a lot of fun, and it's always nice when when
Yeah, I remember one of the few games of 40K I played,
hmm.
and it was up against a bunch of Slanesh,
Oh.
but they did Chaos Space Marines, I believe,
Hmm.
and they did the Emperor's Children.
Hmm.
And so theirs was a gorgeous gold and purple and pinks and all that fun jazz that Slanesh is.
Yeah.
And he was looking for an opponent, and I had my Blood Angels out, and he's like, "Yours are pretty. Let's have pretty go up against pretty."
Yeah.
And
Nice.
it was really awesome to see just fully painted models, just both sides going up against each other. It is a little jarring to say, like,
Yeah.
when there are games going on in the store, and then you see one team or one side has gorgeously painted models, and then the other side has mostly primed only models,
Yeah.
and it kind of takes you out of what's going on in the game.
Yeah.
Kind of like how in D&D, you're kind of in the meta, you're not really in the game anymore, you're just kind of floating on the outside.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor. That's a good metaphor. Yeah, I know I a couple of years early in the pandemic, was it 2 years ago? I don't know. Time's kind of a flat circle, but I had kind of committed that I wanted to play more painted stuff, and so
Mhm.
yeah, so it sort of I had to make some commitments to myself
Yeah.
to be able to do that, and and it's when you got to paint a full army, it's slow going. So
Yeah,
I've had,
especially
I've had to work
because
out some deals and stuff with
yeah,
other friends.
especially because burnout is intense and it's
Yeah,
real.
yeah.
I experienced that when I was trying to do I think 1,000 point kind of. It wasn't really like a painting competition, but it was more
Mhm.
like a group thing that was going on a Discord channel or
Mhm.
a Discord server because I'm a part of the Squidmar server.
Oh, nice.
And they were having this group thing where you paint 1,000 points worth of models, or if you don't play, or if you don't do Warhammer or Sigmar, something that would be close to the amount of like physical models that would be in 1,000 points. So if they wanted to do D&D models, it would be about 15 to 20 models or something like that.
Hmm.
And I I started my fiance's Sister of Battle
Oh, yeah.
because I thought, they're expensive. I could have a short list, right?
Hmm.
And I painted all of his characters, and then all of a sudden I was just like, this isn't fun anymore.
Yeah.
This is. I thought it would be a lot harder because I chose white for their armor.
Mm,
I chose one of
that's
their
hard.
white armored schemes, and I thought it was going to be a lot harder to paint their white, but it turned out really easy, and it became very, very boring and
Yeah.
very, very not fun. And I burnt out super bad, and I didn't want to paint anything at all, and I didn't paint for a good 5 months
Yeah.
because it was
Oh,
just.
that's big time burnout. Yeah.
Yeah, it was just so bad because I was expecting to paint a lot more armor, but Sororitas, they don't have a lot of armor plating like
Mm-mm.
Space Marines do. So there wasn't a lot going on for the white, and everything was just easy. And it's just
Yeah.
boring when it becomes that easy. Yeah,
Yeah. That's
so
true.
burnout is definitely a thing. It's rough and makes things go so much slower. So just
Yeah.
just take your time, and one day at a time. Even if you get a base coat done, that's still better than not
That's right.
getting a base.
That's right. It's
I don't
like what
know.
you said earlier. One more painted model is best. Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of approach burnout as like depression. You
Mm,
know, every little bit counts. So
yeah.
even if you didn't get all the laundry put away, at least you started washing them.
Yeah.
That's a win right there. Every
It
small
is.
bit is a win. So getting that wash on it and letting it sit and dry, that's a win.
I like that. So I have just a couple more questions, just kind of as we wrap up. First, I want to thank you for coming on.
Yeah.
It's been a privilege to be able to interview you, and I hope that our listeners have enjoyed the conversation. I know I have. You've shared some nuggets of good wisdom, and I've been taking notes, and so I'm personally going to own some of that. Um, but two questions. One of them is, there's another Legion of the Brush competition coming up this weekend. Wanted to know if you had plans to enter, and then I also wanted to know kind of what's on your hobby desk, like, and if it is something that you're going to be entering um, in a future competition. What are you building? What are you painting? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So this month's Legion of the Brush was a female Citadel model,
That's right.
and I will not be entering that one.
Okay.
I recently got so so I recently got my job, And
Mhm.
very much recently, I got promoted to be in the management team. So I've been really busy working,
Yeah.
and I'm getting a lot of information thrown at me for training to for management. And since this is my very first management position, I basically am learning everything from scratch. There is no reference that I have in past experiences that I could be
Mm.
like, oh, this is how it was at my other store too,
Yeah.
because I never did any of that. So I'm basically just like a brand new baby into this world of management. So I won't be entering that one, but what I do, I have several things on my desk right now. I think one of them is for the kind of competition, the armies on parade thing that
Yeah.
Warhammer does.
Yeah.
So I have a project for that on my desk. It
Okay.
is going to be a redo of a commission because I recently lost my friend,
Mm.
and he was actually my very first commission.
Mm.
And for a while, I couldn't paint because he was such a big deal to my painting hobby.
Yeah.
Because I had a lot of people approach me about commissions, and I'll say, yeah, I'll do it, and then they won't really follow through. So I didn't think anybody was really taking me too seriously.
Mm.
And he was my actual paid commission. Like,
Mm.
I got through with it, I shipped it out, and then he paid me the money, and I just looked at it and I was like, did you really just pay me to paint some stuff for you? Like,
Yeah.
you legitimately have done this? And so he was just a huge boost of confidence in just all of my work, and from that point on. And so when I found out that I had lost him, I couldn't even look at my desk. I couldn't look over
Yeah.
there. I'd look over there and I feel really, really sad. And I had the idea that I wanted to ask the family for the original commission back so that way I could have it for myself.
Mm.
Um, but I didn't really want to bother them with that. So instead, I had the idea to redo it,
Mhm.
and also redo it in a much better way because I wasn't super satisfied with how it came out. Since
Mhm.
I was on a time limit and he was on a budget, there wasn't, and he wouldn't allow me to do any free work. He was very adamant about making sure that I didn't do
Yeah.
any free work because he was saying that, you know, I do such a fantastic job that I should be paid for it, but I didn't want him to spend too much money. So there was some details that I didn't do and I would have liked to have done better and spent more time on. So the Armies on Parade one is going to be a redo of the commission. It's it's one Forge Fiend and one Mauler Fiend and a squad of bikes,
Okay.
Chaos bikes.
Yeah.
For the original commission, actually, he had me magnetize everything. So if one day he decided he was going to do the Forge Fiend, he could do the Forge Fiend. And maybe the next game he wanted to use the Mauler Fiend instead, but
Yeah.
all in one model. So I actually used about 40 magnets
Ooh.
because I literally had to magnetize everything.
Yeah.
Everything was magnetized. So he could change it out every once in a while. And I put it on a base where I found like a metal base, and I cut it out to fit the exact size, based it, and then tested to see if the magnets would hold up, like on the base, so you can pick it up and everything.
Mhm.
And yeah, because I had to magnetize the legs, so I couldn't glue anything onto the base. So
Oh.
the bottoms of the feet were magnetized so that way when he did change them out, it would stick to the base.
Yeah.
But for the armies on parade, I didn't want to have to deal with magnetizing.
Yeah.
So
No.
I
Yeah.
bought one of each. I bought two of those boxes, and I built them both separately
Okay.
because there's no way I'm gonna stand there for the armies on parade and just say, oh hey look, look what I can do. That's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And then the other project I have was that I wanted to do, since I've been really happy with how my painting style has come out, and I kind of want to stick with that painting style. I decided to do, I guess, I've been calling it like my rainbow marines,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not like a typical rainbow. What I mean by a rainbow is that I wanted to do the first legion, or the first legions, the originals.
Yeah.
So like, Emperor's Children, back before, basically 30K Marines.
Yes.
Actually, I was gonna do a whole line of them. So I bought a couple of Primaris boxes, and I planned it all out. I have a little notebook that tells me, specifics, what kind of color scheme I should go with. If they are known for any kind of special type weapons, like Blood Angels, they're known for having hand flamers. Salamanders are known for having power swords and also flamers. What kind of weapons they specialize in, and I have all that written down in notes. I turned to the fiance with his mass amount of knowledge and lore and asked him so many questions, like what was their original color scheme, before they fell to chaos, or
Yeah.
before the Horus Heresy ever happened. And like some of them changed. Death Guard, I mean, they're not changed, but they are changed. They used to be like a cream and like
Yeah.
a dark forest green. And I guess they are kind of that. It's just, they don't clean their armor. So
Yeah.
now they're kind of just a grosser version of what they used to be.
Very grosser version.
so so yeah, those are the two projects I have going on my desk. It's a
Wow.
huge mess because I've got kit bashing going on, I've
Yeah.
got Forge Fiends and all of that, and it's just like an explosion of plastic just on my desk. And
I think that's great. Both those projects sound like a lot of fun.
I'm
So,
really excited for it because it'd be nice to have like a kind of a display of all the legions.
yeah.
And maybe one day I'll have all of the Primarchs from Forge World and have those go with them. But
Oh, dreams, goals.
so far I have Fulgrim and Sanguinius.
Nice. Very cool.
So, but
Very, very cool.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap up. Our episodes usually go for about an hour or so, and I thank you again for for your time and for the discussion. How about we invite people to go into the war for anybody who's local to the Warhammer Tannismorn store to see your work. How about that?
Yeah. So I've got the Legion of the Brush model in there.
Hmm.
So if they don't get in soon and they don't get to see it, there's actually one of my works that'll probably permanently be there for a little while. It's a Sigmar model, the
Mm.
Yandrasta model. It's the female Sigmarite,
Okay.
with her giant wings.
Yeah.
And that one's in the case as well.
Okay.
I
Nice.
think that
Very
one's
good.
from the most recent Sigmar expansion or edition that they have now. And yeah, the
Yeah.
store manager asked me if I would paint it for him, and I did. And so she's sitting in there. So if you don't get to see the Legion of the Brush model, that Yandrasta model's in there.
Right on. Very cool. And once again, I just want to invite my listeners to to check us out at spellstormminiatures.com. At every episode, I got the links to all the different ways you can support the show. You can join our Discord server, and we have a couple um, affiliate links with Death Ray the Designs and with Noble Knight Games to purchase some games, that sort of thing. If you want to do that, and of course Patreon. We always have that stuff going on. The big announcement that I want to give my listeners is we previously were holding weekly paint nights on Thursday nights, and the big announcement is that we're going to start moving those to a monthly schedule. And so we'll set those in advance, and we'll post them on our Facebook page and in our Discord server. With that being said, thank you for listening. I hope that you were inspired to get out and paint your models and to enjoy the games. Pretty versus pretty. I like the way you did that. So,
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you.